Welcome to this explainer. Right now, we are decoding a massive proposed macroeconomic shift going on between the United States and China. And honestly, more importantly, we're looking at exactly what it means for your personal wealth. So let's dive right into this. What we're actually looking at is the potential restructuring of the entire post-World War II global economy. Understanding this theory is absolutely vital for protecting your money in the years ahead. Here's our roadmap for today. We'll start at the new global crossroads, explore the energy choke point, and uncover a secret monetary negotiation. Then we'll look at the gold escape valve, break down the K-shaped economy, and finally wrap up with protecting your personal savings. Let's get going. Section 1, the new global crossroads. So let's start with a totally unprecedented event that set the stage for this entire economic theory. A historic trip recently brought 18 of the top American CEOs, literally the most powerful business leadership delegation ever put together for a foreign trip in U.S. history, straight to China. This massive gathering signaled to the markets that the traditional monetary order might actually be breaking down right now, and a completely new paradigm is being negotiated. Notice the very specific language Chinese leadership used during these talks. They explicitly asked, can China and the United States overcome the Thucydides trap and create a new paradigm of major country relations? Now, this wasn't just casual diplomatic speak, okay? This was a high-stakes framing of the exact moment in history we are living through right now. And this brilliantly illustrates what they are trying so hard to avoid. So, what is the Thucydides trap? Well, it's an ancient political theory based on history. When a rising power threatens a dominant ruling power, the friction usually leads to conflict. In fact, in 12 out of 16 historical cases studied, it ended in war. Wow. But instead of repeating history's mistakes and risking a conflict, the theory we're exploring today suggests a massive new economic negotiation is taking place between the two superpowers as an alternative. Section 2. The energy choke point. You see, to get a seat at that global negotiating table, a nation needs immense leverage. And think about what's providing that leverage right now: energy. The Strait of Hormuz controls roughly 20% of the world's energy supply. With it closed due to regional conflict, it acts like a quiet economic weapon. The global economy is actively draining its emergency oil reserves just to compensate. The data actually shows we are borrowing oil from the future, with severe operational stress levels expected by June. This tightening supply forces a super urgent timeline on the West to finalize a new monetary deal. Section 3, a secret monetary negotiation. This ticking clock brings us right to the theoretical blueprint of what this new global restructuring actually looks like. So the crucial point here is understanding history to see where we are going. Back in 1985, the U.S. engineered the Plaza Accord, forcing a currency revaluation that basically doubled the Japanese yen. While it definitely helped U.S. manufacturing, it completely destroyed Japan's export economy, leading to their infamous lost decades. Well, China watched that happen, and they strictly refused to let the yuan undergo a similar fate. Instead, a proposed 2026 strategy suggests a radically different avenue. It's almost like a master plan. China demands U.S. tariff rollbacks and, in exchange, offers a massive $1 trillion manufacturing investment right inside America. Moving on to Section 4. The gold escape valve. If direct currency manipulation of the yuan is a complete red line for China, how do both sides actually balance the scales? The data and theory suggest both nations will use a completely different asset as an escape valve: gold. Just think about this staggering discrepancy for a second. The U.S. government holds over 8,000 tons of gold, but officially values it on their books at an astonishingly low $42 an ounce. That's a price set all the way back in 1973. I mean, $42 might buy you a decent steak dinner today, but certainly not an ounce of gold. Meanwhile, the true market price today is exponentially higher, soaring well over $45,000 an ounce in real-world terms. Basically, the U.S. balance sheet is dramatically understated. Under the gold repricing theory, this builds into a fascinating win-win scenario. Both sides agree to weaken the dollar, not against the yuan, but against gold. For the U.S., repricing gold to its actual market value instantly shrinks its massive debt burden and brings in $1 trillion manufacturing investment. And for China, it wildly enriches their vast accumulated gold reserves while completely avoiding the economic destruction of a yuan revaluation. And guys, we're already seeing the fingerprints of this transition in the supply chain data. Non-monetary physical gold has been the single absolute largest U.S. export for 5 of the last 6 months, literally beating out oil and pharmaceuticals. It is flowing rapidly out of the U.S. and straight toward China. Throughout history, the country importing the most gold is usually the one securing its economic future, while the exporter is losing theirs. This quiet migration of wealth is absolutely monumental.
Section 5. The K-shaped economy. While governments shuffle thousands of tons of gold on a macro level to balance their ledgers, we really must zoom in and look at how this directly impacts you and me.
Because when you devalue a currency to pay off massive national debt, it triggers inflation. The critical question we have to ask ourselves is, where does that resulting inflation actually go? It doesn't just disappear. It acts as a devastating, hidden tax on the public.
The dirty secret of modern finance is that inflation functions as a tool to shrink unpayable government debt. But everyday citizens, we don't experience this as some macroeconomic policy. We experience it entirely through surging costs. Inflation hits the basic necessities the hardest: groceries, rent, and gas. A dollar borrowed a few years ago is paid back with dollars today that are worth significantly less, bleeding the consumer dry right at the checkout counter. This engineered inflation fuels what economists call a K-shaped economy. Imagine the letter K. That top line pointing up represents asset owners whose wealth rises nominally right along with inflation. The bottom line, pointing down, represents non-asset owners, people holding cash or living paycheck to paycheck whose purchasing power is sharply declining. Add in the AI revolution systematically replacing jobs at the bottom of the K, and you get a brutal widening divide between those who own scarce assets and those who just hold cash.
Which brings us to Section 6, protecting your personal savings. So, the ultimate question becomes, how do you ensure you aren't left behind as the global monetary system is restructured? The contrast here is incredibly stark. Holding pure cash traps you at the bottom of the K-shape. It steadily loses purchasing power over time, and it is completely controlled by central planners. On the other hand, holding scarce assets, things like gold, Bitcoin, or real estate, places you firmly at the top of the K-shape. Their nominal value rises with inflation, and crucially, governments cannot endlessly print more of them to dilute your wealth. To survive this historical transition, the strategy really boils down to the principles of asset scarcity. You need to shift your focus away from shrinking fiat dollars. Seek out assets with a rigidly capped supply. Look for real utility and intrinsic value. In an environment where the dollar is intentionally devalued against hard assets to manage national debt, utilizing scarcity is your absolute best shield to outpace inflation. As this century-defining monetary transition unfolds in real time, from the Strait of Hormuz right down to the gold reserves of superpowers, it all eventually trickles down to your portfolio. So I want to leave you with the single most important question you must ask yourself to protect your future. Which side of the K-shaped economy are your personal savings currently on? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep learning.